and
This
welcome.
meeting is being recorded.
Yes, it is. I guess it's recording now. We can take that note that it's recording. And this is another episode of No More Conversations, and I'm joined by my old buddy Dan Aho. Hey Dan,
Hello,
how are you,
everyone.
sir?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, man. It's been some years since we got to catch up. We had some good times during the David Barton days.
Yeah.
I perfected your jump shot, told you to get that elbow in, schooled you a few times, but eventually you got to be pretty decent.
I learned a lot from you, and it takes a lot to beat the teacher. And I'm
Yes.
going to be kind because it's your podcast. I'll start my podcast. Wanted to bring you on and tell you the truth of our basketball days, and it's just going to be one episode. And that's the only episode I'll have on my podcast is me just telling the truth.
Great. I'm looking forward to it. Please just just let me know when it gets released.
Okay.
Okay, so you are an actor, and how long have you been acting?
I mean, haven't we all been acting since the day we were born to a certain
Oh,
degree? Right?
oh,
Right? Yeah, we're going
touche.
way back.
We're going.
But no, I really started acting when I was in college. That's when I started studying acting.
Okay, and what led you to it?
The comedy and acting was always something I was really, really interested in, but I grew up in a really small town in a real rural area. So it just never felt like, oh, that's a job that people have. Your brain just doesn't compute when you watch TV or movies. And so I never thought that that was an available thing to do. And then once I got older and the world got a little bit smaller with technology and everything, I was like, oh, wait, people can study this and do this. And so I quietly went off and started to study it, much to the minor chagrin of my family. But here I am 20 some years later.
Okay, so a vet in the game, and it's safe to say that it is one of, if not the passions of your life?
Yeah. I mean, outside of, people talk about loves of your life, which I tend not to include people because they have to love you back, where you can love basketball or acting or entertaining. And you still love them and they don't give you much back sometimes, Whereas if it was a person, they would be like, I'm going to go over, bye. So, yeah, one of the passions.
One of the passions. And basketball is your other passion?
Basketball is another passion of mine, yeah. Basketball, playing, watching the basketball culture of it, yeah, all of it.
So would you say that one passion is higher than the other between basketball and acting, or are they about even keeled?
I mean, I think the pinnacle of it all is Space Jam, isn't it? I mean, basketball and acting together, that's the goal, right?
Yeah.
No. I've had to retire from playing basketball, so that's a major yeah. I'm a
Shit,
very old man now.
Problem? The knee's still giving you problems? Is that what it is?
All of my knees have given me problems.
Oh man, sorry.
We played enough where you probably noticed I didn't play for my long-term health very much. It was 100% all the time. And
that's
so,
how you got to do it. There's no other way.
Yeah. 2 knee surgeries and 42 years of age. And it was like, and a 1 year long pandemic being stuck indoors. And it was like, it's done. It's done.
And you've made peace with that, or do you scratch that itch in other ways? Going to the arcade, perhaps? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think anyone who's ever, not gotten their full piece of pie in anything like basketball, like I never felt fulfilled with what my basketball abilities were. So that'll never go away.
Okay.
But you hear like NBA players who played for obviously 15 years and every single day, and it became an actual job. And they're like, I'm never going to touch a basketball again. And like, I kind of get that, but also it's like, man, I don't get that at all. Right. I play a lot of 2K. I played too much 2K, which is a basketball video game.
NBA 2K. Yeah, I don't think I've ever played it. I've heard of it. I've seen advertisements for it. Never actually played it. I wasn't really too good at it.
Yeah, neither am I, but it scratches that itch, as you said.
Fair. Okay, so I was talking to our mutual friend Rick Fitz about acting, and I told him that I was having a bit of a challenge with my personal engagement in movies and media, and I said that I'm constantly feeling manipulated. I can't tell if I'm reacting to the music in the movie, the actual acting, or something else that's been orchestrated by the production team. And he said very blatantly to me, he said, "Yes, you are being manipulated." He said, "But the less you feel the manipulation, the more the story resonates with you or your story."
Yeah.
How do you
I,
feel
I
about that?
I agree with that. I mean, the world of TV and movies and acting is so broad and vast, especially now with so many more streamers and places to watch and so many more places producing. Like I've stopped watching for the most part most of broadcast TV because of that, because they're just, the old idea that they're just selling soap, which to a certain degree is true. Like going from the production, the writing to the performing, it's all sort of contrived. I've kind of fallen into uh, having another passion for film and cinema, really pushing hard into the cinema side, which does feel less like you're being manipulated and more of a expression and a slice of life and showing you what this particular person or this particular scenario their life is like, which gives you the ability to learn a little bit more about yourself sometimes, or people, or certain aspects of the world, or certain aspects of the country, or certain aspects of economics. That's the part that kind of interests me the most. Um,
And so you're saying that, and when you say broadcast, do you mean like uh, live TV, or what exactly are you coupling under the broadcast umbrella?
Broadcast like ABC, NBC, CBS sort of stuff.
Okay, so even the shows on there.
I've rarely ever watched. Sometimes I'll watch, take a peek at what's going on, watch one episode, but even I've stopped doing most of that because it's like that's just not for me anymore. Certainly as an actor, as like a part of the business, I've done a handful of those shows and they've been fun and I've enjoyed some of the people, but I don't think I watched more than 3 episodes of any show that I've even been on just to know like the style, the pace of it, and things like that.
So you've
And
been
I'll
in,
name names. I will say names. You tell me what show. I'll tell you. I'll tell you. It's Mom on CBS, okay? I don't watch it. I don't know. I'm assuming Chuck Lorre listens to this, and now there's going to be a war between me and him. Bring it on, Chuck Lorre.
who's Chuck Lorre? I feel like I did he go to the gym too? Was he a gym member?
Oh, he may have been way back when. There was a lot of famous people at that gym years ago. But
He's a
no, he
famous
created
person.
like two. He's a very famous TV creator. Yeah.
Oh, Chuck Lorre. Okay, so but you've been in the game so long that you can now see and feel the differences between what's on broadcast television and then what's non-broadcast. Is that how we, or studio productions? Is that what we? I don't know. How do you call
Yeah, like for instance, like back in the day, HBO was considered premium TV, so
it?
they would take more time with they would have a cinematic feel. The production style was way different. There would be more money per episode. They would get better writers. They would let creative people say, here's your show. Give us 8 episodes. Go off and do it. We're not going to give you notes or tell you that you have to put a Chevy in the episode 4, which is like if I'm working on a show and the network says you have to put a Chevy in episode 4, and be like, what? Why do I have to do that? It's a show about, I don't know, going to the doctor and someone has cancer and we have to be in a Chevy for it. Get the fuck out of here. Can I swear? Can I say the F word?
You can say as many F words as you want.
Fuck, 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 fuck.
And
Good.
fuck. There we go. Just
Yes.
to put the
Yeah.
period on it. And that is really interesting. So I'm curious, when you're watching a movie, are you able to still get lost in it, or are you looking constantly noticing the technical details of the film?
Usually the first time I can pretty easily be sucked into any movie unless it's so bad that there's things that are just jarring and you're like, I'm no longer in this movie. Like whatever you're
Yeah.
watching, you have to buy into whatever reality they're creating, right? Like whatever world, whatever context, you have to buy into that. But if there's something that breaks that reality, then you're like, what's going on? That doesn't make sense to me. And then if it keeps doing it, you're like, I don't want to watch this anymore because it's just not consistent creatively or texturally for whatever they were trying to do.
Fair. Huh. Okay, so I'm curious. Two similar but separate questions. What do you think is the best technical movie of the past 5 years?
Whoa. That's a tough question. Always. Uh, Technical. I mean, I don't know. I'm not super technical. That's the side I'm learning more and more about, the directorial and cinematography side of it. But the movie that just popped in my head was a movie, Parasite, um, which was a South Korean director, Bong Joon-ho, and it's kind of his first breakout movie here, even though a lot of people knew him. But it won the Oscar, and it was a foreign language movie, which a lot of people just don't like reading while they watch movies, which
Mhm.
doesn't make sense for a visual medium, but I get it. Um, I just thought that was such a well crafted movie to kind of uh, work in a lot of different places because it had this Hitchcockian feel, but there was comedy and it was authentically South Korean as well. And it tackled a lot of issues in terms of economic structure, people living in these mansions and the people that, I don't want to spoil the movie for you if you haven't seen it or anybody, but people who literally live below
Live.
in a basement. Um,
Okay. Hmm.
I
Okay.
think that's a very good movie. But I don't know why that popped in my head. If I sat around and thought about it for 20 minutes, I'd probably come up with a bunch of other movies as well.
And that movie was done well just because of the amount of scrutiny he put on, I guess maybe researching those problems in that society or the cinematography,
Yeah, I
all
mean,
of
I
it.
think the best movies, I think all of us living life realize how complex life can be in any given afternoon, in any given hour, in any given year, in any given lifetime. And oftentimes movies or something will only do comedy or only do drama. And I just don't think that's how life is. And I think Parasite was a movie that did a lot of things seamlessly. Like you don't see the seams. You don't have those moments where you're like, what's going on? You're not jarred out of it. It was just seamless for the amount of things that it talked about and it attacked, and also just lighthearted comedy moments, which, you know, if you ever been in a funeral and someone farted, it's funny. It's just funny,
I
you
haven't.
know.
I have not been at
Well,
a funeral and somebody farted.
bring a fart machine next time you're in a funeral. Everyone will appreciate it,
I will.
except for the person that's dead.
Well, they're not going to care. They're just not going to care.
So no one's gonna care.
Fair. And so something that I've been fascinated with, even though I do feel manipulated or feel like, the production team and the actors are trying to manipulate me, there is something I appreciate about the level of research that they do in paying attention to what feels real and what the audience is going to respond to. It's like phenomenal. It's like if the average individual would put a fraction of that effort into understanding their personal story, like what that could do for the individual. Because I think every person to me is more entertaining than a movie that I go and watch. It's like there's a story inside of everyone. It's just about like figuring out what it is.
Yeah,
Um,
it's much editing is very hard. So you're right, and people are much more interesting, but people are horrible editors of themselves. You know, it could take you 6 to 8 hours talking to me and finding three interesting stories, whereas a really good writer could do that in a 30-minute episode of TV.
so what you're saying is like people are really bad editors of themselves, and editing is supposed to pull the highlights out better, more
Essentially,
effectively.
like if you watch a movie, like I think the movie Parasite, let's use that example. I think that may take place over 2 or 3 months, if not longer, but it's a 2 hour movie. So it's really hard to be like, all right, there's this situation that happened in 2 or 3 months. We can't chew a documentary and have someone watch it for 2 or 3 months. We got to edit it down to what's the kernel of the story or their inspiration or the interesting things. And it's really hard. It's really, really hard.
Mm.
And that's why you get a lot of shit that you feel manipulated by, or sometimes that's its only job is to manipulate you. What's that show on NBC, This Is Us or something like that, where
Yeah.
it just seems like our job is to make you cry every episode. And
Okay.
it's like, eh,
Got it.
that's some of the actors and stuff are great and the writers are great, but that's just that style of show. That's what its job is, and some people love that. That's just not for me.
Got it. Because it's like you feel it too often. It's like, okay, they're trying too hard to pull out these emotions every single episode. Is that what that is for you?
Yeah, a little melodramatic, and like you said, like the music. That's one thing that always bothers me. Is like usually if you're watching a good scene with good actors with good writing, you don't need any music. Like you
Right.
get it. I don't need the music to be like, you're sad now. I don't need that.
Right. That's exactly what's happening.
Yeah. Yeah. Something dangerous is about to happen. It's like, no, let me figure that out on my own.
Completely agree. That is the best analogy of what the music is doing.
Or the worst of all is laugh tracks,
Laugh tracks when
which is fake laughter put on a
game
lot
shows
of,
and stuff, or
well, a lot of
nighttime
TV shows do it.
television.
Yeah. A lot of sitcoms have the laugh tracks.
Okay. So if you were writing or producing, I'm not sure exactly what the difference is, but actually, that's probably a good point. Can we distinguish between the difference between like writing, because obviously writing is the script, and like producing?
Producing is going to take a couple of weeks for us to talk about to figure out what it is. A lot of research. Producing, I don't know. Producing can cover so many different things, from being someone who takes someone's script, who's like, I like this. Can I show it to someone I know that has a production company? And all of a sudden that person who just took the script and brought it here is like, I'm also a producer. I'm like, what?
Okay.
And then the producer could be like the person getting all the money together, or the person getting all the creative teams together, or the person that's on set every day dealing with all the logistics. It covers a lot of different things that even someone who's probably been here in this industry for 30 years is like, yeah, I don't really know what a producer does.
Okay, good to
Depends
know.
on every project.
But everybody wants to wear a producer hat. I've
Yes.
noticed. It's like they want
Yes.
that label of producer. Because what does that do? Because I was watching there's a conversation, something, one of my guilty pleasures. It's like the Hollywood Red Round Table.
Yeah, those are great. Yeah,
Those are great because it's like you're seeing, I think those are absolutely magnificent. And actually I was listening to somebody who said like they had a favorite actor, but they didn't like them when they met them in person. But I really like the Hollywood roundtables because it's like you just have a set of actors or actresses, and they're talking to each other, and you can tell that they're opening up a little more. Because like I find it, I'm always like second guessing myself when I'm seeing an actor talk to a reporter or talking to an audience of people. It's like, how much of this is just polished training and how much of it is real?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think the red carpet stuff is all like part of their job, and going on talk shows. And I mean, some of the people are wonderfully entertaining on talk shows, but they're far and few in between. But there's this weird balance of, actors like talking about acting because it's what they've studied and they take it very seriously. But then there's also this part where, yeah, you don't want to let people in too much to see how the sausage gets made, because it is a very personal and vulnerable thing sometimes, because depending on what project you're doing or what role you're doing, you really have to dig deep into some dark places of yourself sometimes, or really confront sadness or loss or things like that. And it kind of sometimes does feel tiring or exhausting, at least emotionally, not to the aspect of, not pouring concrete for 12 hours a day, but sitting down, writing an experience that's somehow you have to tap into a place in yourself that you're calling on losing a parent or something to try to understand what this made up person is going through. And it gets a little weird. It kind of gets a little weird. But those Hollywood roundtables, they do a pretty good job at, kind of explaining their processes and what they enjoyed about projects. And it's not something that you get on a lot of these shows.
Right. I think that's what it is, why it feels a little more real, because you can kind of tell when actors, or at least I have been kind of able to notice when actors are breaking character when they're not on a movie, and like when they're engaging real, like when they're in a room full of their counterparts. It's almost like they know that they can't fool the person across from them because they're all doing the same thing. So it's like they're more willing to be a little vulnerable with how they feel about things. And obviously, the vets, they have less care about how people perceive them because their name is already established in the books. So usually, it's the vets that kind of open up a little more, which gives the other actors in the room permission to open up and
Yeah.
be a little more vulnerable. And it's kind of nice to see that break down.
Yeah.
There is an episode of David Letterman's My Next Guest.
Hmm.
Have you seen that at all?
I've seen all of them. I love Letterman. Yeah.
He does a great job. He does a great job, and he's doing it his way now. It's not like he's doing the slapstick comedy anymore. He's like, no, this is what I'm interested in, and we're going to do it my way, and it just feels
Yeah.
really authentic. But there's an Kim Kardashian's episode. It's like she is a production, like she's always in character, and I think that's probably largely due to the mom coaching them on like how they should be presenting themselves. Mom does a great job at just building that empire. But there's a moment in that episode where Kim breaks character. You can tell like she's doesn't care about the cameras, she doesn't care about the image, and she is just being herself. Do you know what it is or that I'm thinking about?
I don't remember that. It probably seemed so brief to me that I saw a real human there that I might have forgotten it, but refresh my memory.
David Letterman goes with her into like a CVS. I don't know why they're there, but they go into CVS and they get to the pin aisle. And as soon as they get to the pins, Kim's character just falls away and she is just obsessed with like pins and choosing the right pin. And she's in this probably like $20,000 skirt, and she just drops to the floor, gets the pins, and just starts writing. And I was like, oh wow, there's Kim.
Yeah.
That's what gets her excited. That's fascinating. So along that same train of thought, who do you think is the best actor that's still working right now? Actor or actress?
Uh, Again, that's tough to do off the top of my head. I mean, the go-to, and I think kind of everyone's sort of maybe not personal pinnacle, but like everyone's like, yeah, that person there. I think there's two. Um, Meryl Streep is one, and I think Daniel Day Lewis is another. Those are just the top of my head. I could come up with a bunch more as well, but just the work that Daniel Day Lewis does, it's very old school, and it's no longer, to a certain degree, everyone's pressured now to be on Instagram and have a following. And I've heard people not get auditions because they didn't have enough followers, which is bananas to me. But um,
Oh wow.
yeah, which also in the same time where we all know that followers can be faked and bought, so that never
Yeah.
makes any sense to me. And also, who's gonna if someone's just scrolling past your feed, who's gonna sit down and be like, "Oh, I'm gonna watch a 30-minute TV episode of that person in," because they don't really watch. You're not really invested in anybody. But anyway, um, yeah, Daniel Day Lewis for what he does, like he most of the time he's in character the whole time. He spends a lot of time creating these characters and working with the director, and he's a fascinating creature.
Daniel Day Lewis, because he was Lincoln, right?
He was Lincoln, There Will Be Blood, The Master, My Left Foot, a movie back from the 90s about an Irish writer. In the Name of the Father, another one. He plays a Northern Irish gentleman. Um, but yeah, I think with anything that you do that you like, you have to be committed to it, right? That's the
Mhm.
kind of the purpose of doing anything. And that's why essentially we're playing pretend. And so it goes back to when you were a kid. Kids you like to play with were the kids that were fun to play with, which meant they, to a certain degree, they took it seriously, being playing basketball or playing outdoors. And he takes it very seriously and he's committed to it, and he does a very good job.
Okay, I'm going to be paying attention to Daniel Day Lewis next time I get the opportunity to come across one of his movies.
Yeah.
Do you have a particular style of acting that you enjoy most? I would assume comedy, but I don't know.
Yeah. I think no matter what I do, I try to, if I'm able to choose, I put a little bit of comedy in it. I love comedy the most. But like I said, I think uh, life has so many different shades. And so I think creatively having a comedy and drama in the same thing, I think is interesting. Because I think that's how most of my day is internal and maybe more comedy and the drama's happening outside, or I'm saying things in my head that I can't say outside. But as I grow older, I think that's becoming less and less because I just don't give a shit. Um, but yeah, comedy with a little bit of drama in it is kind of my go-to. I spent a lot of the time of the last year being stuck indoors writing stuff, and that's kind of that mix of those two is what I really enjoy.
Is there what do you think is the hardest part about writing comedy or drama? I don't know if it's something it's different for those two genres, or if there's just one thing that's the most difficult for you when you're writing those things.
I think the thing that you're always chasing is finding truth, is with whatever story you're trying to tell, and with every single character as well, as trying to find the truth of the matter. Um, which a lot of the stories and scripts and TV shows that we watch are contrived. They're put together by a formula almost, which even when you send out scripts for people to read, they're like, no, this should happen on page 15, and then this should happen on page 30, and then page 4. And like, I get it. I get how stories are told, but to have it that structured, it just takes away the human spirit of it. But yeah, finding the truth. Because if something's not true, you feel it, right? That's when you're like, yeah, I don't like this show anymore. Or what happened there? If it's not true to the moment, true to the character, true to the story that you're trying to tell, or whatever you're trying to express to the audience.
Right, right. Finding the truth. And do you think um, finding the truth can best be determined by, as far as movies are concerned, finding the truth can best be determined by how you feel
As the creator or as the audience?
as the, well, maybe both. Or, yeah.
Yeah, as the creator, like for me, I never really know what I'm going to be writing next. I usually have 3 or 4 things, and whatever kind of takes the lead is what just let I'll start writing more. With the audience, that's a little tougher because if you go into something with preconceived notions or a desire to feel a certain way, you may get surprised and not enjoy yourself. That's why I always think it's important, especially when I go to the theater, to be like void of any noise that's happening in the world with reviews or so and so's dating someone. It's like I don't care. I just want to go watch the Brad Pitt movie and just enjoy it as a movie, and then come out and think about it more. Um, so in the audience, it's tough, but as a creator, you kind of have to have a focus of what you're trying to say or what you're trying to tell.
So switching gears here, since you're constantly exercising this muscle of finding truth in your writing, do you also find it easier to find truth in the age of fake news?
Um, I mean, facts aren't hard to to find really for the most part. I mean, there's a lot of minutia in the world and a lot of gray area, but I don't know. In the last 4 or 5 years, it doesn't seem particularly hard. More than it was before. It's pretty easy to see that Donald Trump and all of his people are large pieces of shit that have no interest in government or being truthful or uh, caring for anybody but themselves. That's not hard for me. I think the difficult thing is uh, that news and journalism has become a business, and that's a particular slide that's going to be hard to come back from.
I can't really tell, but it seems like there's you feel some type of way about the Trump administration and his minions.
Yeah, I have the feeling like I don't like them. Like I kind of have the feeling like if a bunch of people should just be struck down by a being above us, it should be all of them, and like we should never see them, and they should go through painful deaths on the toilet alone. Is
Okay.
that what you're looking for?
That was a little more clear. Thank you.
Yeah, like I want them to all shit out their intestines on the toilet and slowly die like it's a Saw movie. Is that too graphic?
I don't think so. I think it was probably right on, you
Okay,
know. I think it was
good.
about right on. And on that note, outside of just the Trump, like what do you think of the state of the world? Any broad general thoughts? Because I guess I really wanted to talk to you about this because you suggested that I read that book, A People's History of the United States.
Yeah, Howard Zinn. Yep.
Yep, that was really eye opening to me. As I told you, I read some of that book, and I was like, okay, wow, I should stop believing this stuff that I was taught in grade school. You know, the one that sticks out most is obviously the story of Christopher Columbus and who he was and how he operated. Um,
100% Trump supporter. 100% Christopher Columbus. Yeah.
oh yeah, definitely. Oh, definitely. He funded probably most of the campaign. He would if he was
Yeah.
around.
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts for the state of our country right now?
I don't know. It's always been troubled. I think that's what people don't really think about or talk about. Every generation has its troubles. I think we have so much more information at us now currently in terms of news, fake news, places where we get our news, more stories, more people trying to motivate you by scaring you or make you listen by scaring you. Um, but it's certainly troubled in different facets than it was before. I mean, I don't think our uh, government has been great ever. I don't think it's been like, good job, everybody. Good job, white guys. And even as we've uh, broadened our politics, it's still about money. It really is. And I don't know how we get rid of that without the people that are deciding that it's about money are the people that are getting the money. So it's a real, I think that's the definition of a catch 22. I don't know if I'm wrong. Um, but it's certainly worrying that we may not have a democracy if things keep sliding, or less of a democracy than we had, because it certainly hasn't been a democracy for the last 400 plus years.
So, and by democracy, you mean
Everything's
people?
fair and everyone has a chance and opportunity.
That doesn't feel, yeah, that doesn't feel like we've ever had that
No,
here.
we've never had that. No. And there's certain aspects that have certainly gotten better. That's undeniable. Like
Hmm.
the way that the country, it's a slow baby steps progressing with race or sexism or things like that. It's really baby steps. But even in my generation, my lifetime, it feels like it's gotten better. Not for everybody, not good enough, but and that's no way to be like, all right, things have gotten better. Now let's sit back and relax. No, fuck that. But it's still fucked up, really fucked up.
Yeah, yeah,
And we certainly
100%.
see more stories. Like I think back to the Rodney King video, like how much of a world opening that thing was. And then now we're like, oh yeah, there's just more cameras now.
Yeah.
Everyone has cameras. It's not like,
Mhm.
oh, this is happening a lot now. It's like, no, we have fucking cameras.
Yeah, it's not, I don't think it's any, it's always been like this. Like,
Yeah.
not too much has changed just now that everyone has a camera. And then we had a year to sit at home and we're forced to pay attention to these things. And I think that's kind of the catalyst for this awakening that seems to be
Yeah.
happening in this country right now.
And it's having conversations. Like I remember always, even when I was growing up, the old thing was you never talk about religion, money, or politics. This is like kind of like what your parents would tell you. And like to a certain degree, that's kind of true because if you're in mixed company or something, you could offend someone or someone doesn't want to talk about it. But I don't think we learn anything by not talking about those things. Like for me, growing up in a rural area with mostly white people, a lot of Native Americans there, but I didn't know any of the experience of anything besides of what I had or what my parents had. And I remember that one conversation I had with our old mutual friend John Webb at the gym was his experience when he said when he would get pulled over. He said I would take out my wallet, I would take out my keys, I would put them both on the dash and put my hands on the dash. And I was like, "What?" And that never crossed my mind. And like as much as white people are scared to talk about like their privilege, even if they know it happens or not, that's a privilege that if I get pulled over for the, if I was 26, 27 at that time, never crossed my mind.
Hmm.
It's like the more details we can get in terms of the world through Howard Zinn's book or through talking with people, I think it benefits us to have an understanding. And I think that's kind of the slow progression that we're having, those baby steps. But then there's just a tons of people that are just like, I don't want to listen to you.
Yeah, I think that's most people. They don't want to listen to anything that's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
For sure. Going back to Howard Zinn's book, so that was the Christopher Columbus thing was the thing that stood out to me most. What was the most important thing you think you got from that book?
I mean, I think just in general, it's a big book. That's a lot of book there. I
It's a
think
lot of
it's
book.
just the, I think I've always been kind of more implied to ask questions or ask why. And so even in school, I was like, I'm not taking my history classes too seriously because it always felt like it was always propaganda to a certain degree, especially USA is the best and we won World War II, and always constantly making jokes about how we saved the French and the French owe us. And like, what is this? What's going on? So it's just the importance of details and asking more questions and looking for more answers on things. Like I'm sure there's things that are in that book that people have problems with, or maybe is shown not to be as accurate as it once was, but it's a pretty detailed book and it paints a really good picture of our history, the good, the bad, and the ugly, mostly ugly, unfortunately. And I think that's kind of, not pulling any specific thing from that book, but overall is you need to find more uh, you need to find more details about the world and about life. And so I've kind of tried to keep that with um, reading books about things I don't know about, which is a lot. There's a lot I don't know. I don't know anything really. And so it's a real uphill battle.
That's most. I mean, that's what the beginning of knowledge, right? Is to realize that you know next to nothing.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's really fascinating. There's just so much information out there. Like I
Yeah.
don't even really watch the news anymore. I'm I don't see a reason to. Obviously, I want to know the big things that are happening. So I mean, I follow a couple of news pages on my phone, but like just I don't need that constant anxiety. Trying to shape your behavior based off of fear. Instilling
Yeah.
fear into the audiences, like you said, seems to be one of the primary motives now. So I don't. I try not to involve myself with that.
Yeah. Or they're just marketing to what people want to watch.
Right. Right.
Like
Because
that
I mean,
seems like it seems like what CNN is. Like I think people like to compare them in Fox News, which Fox News is propaganda and they're blatantly lying to you and telling you horseshit. Or I think CNN is just really fucking lazy with their journalism. The one person I like on there is Jake Tapper. He does a pretty good program where it tries to do more stories than like, what's the latest thing that Trump said? Or oh, gun violence in the Florida. I'm like, I get it. I don't need to know every time someone shoots a gun in America because it's a lot.
right.
Um, Not to diminish people dying by firearms, but it just seems like Jeremy bought a gun in North Carolina. I was like, why are you doing a story on Jeremy buying a gun?
Right.
He hasn't bought bullets yet. It's silver and it's shiny, and he seems like he has mental problems. Coming up at 6. Like, come on. Give me some actual news of the world. AP
Exactly.
News is the one that I kind of go to because it's kind of has the reputation for being nonpartisan and being like, we're just news. It's really boring, but it's just news. So
Okay. I'll
if that
keep
helps
that.
you
I'll
at all.
probably try to follow the AP news on my IG feed because that's
Yeah.
what I'm looking for. Just the news. I just want just the facts.
Yeah.
Um, and it's always befuddled me on how these news stations can tell blatant lies and not have to uh, account for it or pay for it. Because isn't
Yeah.
that called like libel when a person does it against another person?
I forget that piece of legislation that came across. I mean, I could probably look it up here in Google, but I think it happened during the Reagan administration, where basically legislation was passed that you can no longer go after news organizations for basically telling lies or blatant lies, which is kind of. And then immediately, I think 3 or 4 years after that is when Fox News sprouted up, and clearly that's what Fox News is. Like they're being sued, and even in court, they're saying we're not journalists; these are just talk shows, and people are saying their opinion. It's like Tucker Carlson. Tucker Carlson isn't a journalist. He's a spoiled guy that doesn't have a chin. He wore bow ties for a long time. We don't know why. We never really asked. He's got a weird haircut. He makes weird faces. But we're telling you right now, he's just not a journalist.
Is that what's happening right now? there was a piece of legislation that said you can't go after them, and then in court they're like, "Yeah, we're not really." Is that really what's happening?
There was a large separation in time, but yeah, in the 80s. Again, I'm not giving really detailed information here, but yeah, there was a piece of legislation that passed somewhere in the late 80s. I believe it was during the Reagan administration, which led us to where we are now. We're literally in court just in the last year, where Tucker Carlson and his show got sued. Fox News lawyers were like, "Yeah, no, this isn't really news," and it was out there, and
Yeah.
everyone knew it. But then people are still watching. People in my fucking family are still watching Fox News. And it's just like, don't you have anything else that you can do? Can you make a quilt or make a bird box? Anything, please, for the love of God, stop.
Wow.
It's crazy.
Okay. I didn't know that was even out there. That's hilarious. That's hilarious. And you're right. People just ignore that and they continue believing what they want to believe.
Yeah, because I don't know if it's what they want to hear or if it feeds into, I don't know. Why do people fear immigrants? It just doesn't make any sense. People like to be scared or like to feel, I don't know. It doesn't make sense to me.
No leading theories on why you think that is, on why people are so scared?
I mean, dumb people can be really manipulated easily. I mean, we're all manipulated easily. You don't want to see my closet with how many pairs of Jordans and Nike shoes I have, so I can't really be like, I'm an individual. I'm not a sucker for advertisement or being manipulated by a basketball player that tells me to buy his shoes. That's not me. So that is me, and I have to quarrel with the fact that these shoes are made in China, and like you're making a decision all the time, but it's another thing to be so empty-headed, to have your brain filled with whatever voice is telling you these things. And if you only listen to one voice, well, you're gonna end up believing a lot of things that one voice says.
Right. Very
And
true.
I think that's what's happening with a lot of people. And they're just like, make sure you watch at 5, at 6, and 7, and you wake up in the morning and watch us in the morning because we have all the news that you need. And you need to know it now because they're coming for your guns. And it's like, all right. I grew up with guns. We had guns. No one ever came with them. We should have probably had them locked up better. But come on, no one's coming for your guns except those stupid ones that you don't need.
Right. So you're basically saying nobody needs an assault rifle.
No one needs an assault rifle. I grew up around bears, bobcats. What are you going to do with an assault rifle? There's not a gang of bobcats. They're going to come in your backyard. You're not going to all of a sudden wake up in the morning and there's 50 bobcats and they're like, give us your chicken. And we're like, well, I have an AR-15, so let's do this. Like, that's just not happening.
Right. It's just completely unnecessary in my opinion as well. And just so I'm clear, how many pairs of Jordans do you have?
Well, I've sold some. Like I think that was, if I had to identify my midlife crisis, that was part of it. Which isn't bad, right? That's not bad.
Absolutely not. No.
I think shoes total, I probably have 30-ish, 40 or so maybe.
It's a lot.
It's a lot. It's more feet than I have, but people have way more.
They do.
So
a lot
that's
of
my justification.
Women have. Most of my female friends, they will say they have at least 100.
Yeah. And the sneaker culture is kind of blown up in the last handful of years. And like, I think we're pretty close in age, right? 5, 6-ish, 7-ish years.
Yep.
So we kind of came up when sneaker culture like became a thing, like Jordan in the 90s.
We did, but I never really understood it. I've had one pair of Jordans that was given to me. So it was never like, I never really understood it, but I was never one to like really be a watcher of sports. I was always the one wanting to kind of participate and play them.
Right.
So yeah, I still don't really understand the craze behind shoes.
It's definitely a nostalgia trap, which is also a lot of the world. Getting things that you couldn't have before, which certainly is part of mine. Like I think growing up, I only had one pair of Air Jordans just because my dad was like, I'm not paying $100 for a pair of sneakers.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, right. I get it. And so a lot of that is like, I'm making up for lost time.
Mm-hmm. Fair. Do you have, 'cause I want to stay in this vein of politics for a little longer. Do you have ideas on tax policy?
Do I have ideas on tax policy?
Yes, Mr. Aho. Do you have ideas on tax
So you
policy?
start off with like name the best movie ever, name the best actor ever off the top of my head, and now we go to give me your best tax policy.
Yeah, all over the place.
Um, Tax the fucking rich. Is that a good tax policy?
Fair.
Yeah,
Um,
corporations should pay taxes. We should no longer have tax loopholes, which should allow you to hide your money on companies on islands, people on islands. I don't know if you ever read up on the, I think it was the Panama Papers it was based off of, which is a bunch of leaked papers which showed how many rich people and rich corporations were hiding their money in shell corporations to avoid paying taxes, which included people all over the globe, which included my wife's from Ireland, from Dublin, which included Bono and all of you too, which was quite the shock to the small island of Ireland. But it just goes to show how, and it's, if I had $20 million, what would I do with my money? Would I do that same thing? That's a great question. But tax the fucking rich, close the loopholes. That's my tax policy. It's really
ah,
basic to start
it
because
is
I'm not
pretty
smart
basic.
enough to know the minutia. Um, But yeah, we're a really rich country and we have a real hard time taking care of people. And that's a lot with incompetence and poor management, but also a lot with people are just hoarding the money.
I agree. It seems like common sense to me. We are a very rich country, so why is there so much poverty? Why can't we get health care for everyone?
Yeah.
Why can't we do simple things like that?
Well, the
Doesn't make
people deciding all the money things are the people that have all the money. And so that's the problem that we have to wedge in. And that goes to lobbyists and all that shit. So I wish it was as easy as me saying tax the rich, but it's not.
it's not. Yeah, it's very very complicated. And I know my elders are not going to appreciate this, but I've basically lost faith in the voting process.
Okay.
I remember one year I was ready to pay attention to the local elections, and I was ready to read all of the what do you call them, the propositions.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, okay, so I got the book, I started reading the propositions, and I was reading it, and in this proposition there's probably like, 5 or 6 sentences, and it's like even within those 5 or 6 sentences about this proposition, there's like contradiction. There's like loopholes built into these 5 or 6 sentences. It's like, oh yeah, we're going to do this and this and this, unless we don't want to. It's like, okay. So I decided to go to the website for that proposition. And that proposition is like 30 pages long, single
Mm-hmm.
space. It's like, how do you expect me to get a genuine understanding of this proposition through the 5 or 6 sentences that you sent me in this little pamphlet? And then there's, if there's 15, 20 propositions at 30 pages each, it's like, who has the real time to invest into all of that? And even them being, again, they're contradictive in themselves. So there's so much leeway built in, so many loopholes built into each proposition. So I was like, I don't feel like I can have an effect even if I vote.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard because there's a motive for everything. And a lot of times, especially with the propositions and politics, the motive isn't take care and have a fair balance for everyone, an opportunity for everyone, or do the right thing. That's just not the motive for most of it, which uh, it should be, but the world is complex. But it's hard to figure out what's bullshit and what's not. And sometimes you do have to comb through a lot of details to get the right information to make the right choice. But some of the voting thing in our democratic process is fairly easy, I would say, especially when it comes to certain presidential elections, which um, this last one is a fairly easy choice, even though I personally wouldn't agree with a lot of Biden policies, or I'm not a registered Democrat. I will probably never be because I feel that two-party system is foolish, but I'm certainly not fucking voting for a Republican in this day and age. And I don't see that changing unless I have a major head injury or they wake up and have some sort of come to Jesus moment because they apparently really believe in the guy, but they don't bother listening to anything that he reportedly said.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I think it all kinds of, if you vote locally is important, but I think in your everyday life, it's every decision that you make comes down to, is this right or wrong to a certain degree? And it's, do the right thing. And there's gray area in that. And that comes to like, I've had to have difficult conversations with my family in terms of what their politics, if you want to even call it politics, are in terms of who they're voting for. And I've discovered QAnon supporters in my family. And so that became a thing of like, what's my responsibility in this? And I think my responsibility is, to a certain degree, I can't affect what's happening in Washington, D.C. too much, right? I can't affect what's happening in the UN, but what I can take care of is my fucking backyard, which is your responsibility, right? The city will come by, and if your lawn looks like shit, they'll be like, you got garbage all over in your lawn, you need to take care of your lawn. So in a certain degree, my responsibility is to take care of my backyard. And that means taking care of all my personal decisions, thinking and talking with my wife about decisions, which mutual decisions that we have to make, decisions that she makes. And also when it comes to my family or where I grew up, I need to be like, that's bullshit if it's bullshit. And I think that's the smallest way that you can kind of make sure that you're affecting things. And I think that grows bigger and bigger, because you will affect other people who will then look at things and the difference between, well, what's the right thing and what's the wrong thing to do here. And I've said goodbye to certain members of my family because I have friends that are more family than they are, and they're just relatives now, because there's a direct conflict of what they think about who my friends are based upon their religion or the color of their skin or whatever bullshit that they're consuming. And that it just gets to the point was like, I don't want to be around you. I don't feel comfortable around you. And I've told other parts of my members of my closer family, it's like, I don't think you should talk to them much more than you absolutely have to. And that's difficult because they're siblings.
That
And so
Yeah. Yeah, that is tough, but I think you're absolutely right. You got to like take care of your own backyard. You have to call
yeah,
bullshit on like, and that's probably the best place to do it, because I think most people probably aren't in a place where they're ready to call bullshit on their colleagues or their, most of their social circles. But within your family, you should have at least enough security to call bullshit on them. Because I mean,
yeah,
it's like at the end of the day, it's still all love. And even if it does mean that you need to separate for a while, it's like, well, no, this is how I feel. And you have to be able to call bullshit on people that are in your close circle at least. Otherwise, like, what type of circle is it if you can't have those
yeah.
open and honest conversations?
But that's even a thing that you have to deal with the people that you work with to a certain degree, right? Because you don't have a choice of that. If you're not the boss, you don't have a choice of who you work with. And we worked together for a long time, and I'm sure we both can identify people that we didn't like or enjoy or respect, but we still had to have a relationship with them. And so like for me personally, and maybe to the detriment of my career, that I have made choices of like, my relationship with you, person that I just work with, is going to be purely business. I'm not going to pretend to be friends, pretend to be friendly, or pretend that I want to go out with you after work. And that's my signaling to you. Like this is comparting, putting our relationship in this small box, and it's not outside of that already. And I think a lot of people, because they want to be liked or because they want friends, send mixed messages, which doesn't allow the people who are, let's say, making mistakes morally or whatever, to not question what they're doing, and it just goes off on a bad road until you get to the point of like, oh dude, you're really messed up right now, are you okay?
Right. Right. So that brings me back to two questions. I mean, number one, about like how much we're acting in life, just trying to make everyone feel comfortable or whatever. Like, do you have like a spidey sense that you can see when somebody's like being genuine with you or not? Is that something that you can kind of tell pretty easily?
Yeah, not to say that that's not wrong sometimes, but yeah, I mean, gone are the days that you trust doctors, lawyers, or policemen because just the job that they had, which was another thing growing up, is like, respect the police, respect lawyers. Like, why the doctor could be a maniac. He could have brains that he's cut out of people in his basement. I don't know why you would do that, but he could.
He could. Yeah.
So yeah, you really have to not be rude to somebody, obviously, but yeah, you see a lot of people and you're like, okay, I think you're full of shit. All right. We'll continue this later. Maybe. I don't know. I don't want to be around you. But right now I have to be. So have a good day, because honestly, even though you're a shit person, I want you to have a good day, and hopefully you wake up and stop being a shit person.
Right. Exactly. Good vibes. Got to send them good vibes
Yeah.
anyways.
But if I see somebody like that, I'm like, nope, next, see you later. Because it's really hard to form a connection with another human being. It really, really is. And I think when you find that, it's a little bit of magic, and you need to keep that around in terms of, friends, creatively, anything. Like I've
Right.
had a lot of friends, especially in the creative side, where I knew next to little about the actual data of their lives, like where they grew up, all their siblings. But we would get together and there would just be some connection, and we would just constantly do bits and never stop talking, and it just seemed like there's some sort of mind meld. And I think that's just absolutely magic. So why would I waste my time on someone who's a chauvinist dick or something like that, which is really common?
Right.
I was like, why would I waste my time hanging around with someone like that? Eventually that person will be left, hopefully will be left isolated and be like, why am I alone? Why does no one like me? I hate women. Why does no one like me? God, women are the worst. I just don't get why people don't want to hang around with me. Like, that's the goal, is to get those person isolated in a corner with a bottle of empty alcohol, questioning their lives and their decisions.
Fair. Yes, I definitely a couple people come to mind when you did that.
Yeah.
So because you grew up in Michigan, right?
I grew up in Michigan.
Okay.
Yep.
Grew
Northern
up
Michigan, very, very rural.
northern Michigan. So in how many years have you been in LA?
I've been in LA for 9 years now. I was in
Okay.
Chicago in the middle bit.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Okay. So Michigan, Chicago, LA. Have you noticed a difference in like how people interact between all of those places?
Yeah, I mean, there's the stereotypical ones, and I think certain stereotypes exist because at least they're partially true. I mean, and most of those don't have to be hurtful, but that's what stereotypes are. Like, I'm a white guy. I'm not a particularly good dancer. That's a stereotype that does exist. There's a
Come
lot of
on,
white
Dan.
people who
I've
aren't good
seen you move.
dancers.
You've got some
I
moves.
mean, I've got some rhythm, but I'm not a good dancer. Check with my choreographer on a chorus line when I was in college. Not a good dancer. I had to show up an hour and a half before rehearsal to look somewhat competent, and then I was put in the back corner anyway. Um, I was so bad. It made me so angry. Like when you can't do something and you can't figure it out, and you get so upset, especially when you're in your early 20s. You
Yes.
just feel like you should be able to do everything. Anyway, what was the question?
The question was, have you been able to notice the differences in how people interact between like Michigan, Chicago, LA?
Oh yeah. I mean, Michigan's an entirely different animal already. I mean, I think a lot of it has to do with like finding your people with similar interests and similar likes or similar points of view on the world. And that gets harder when you're getting older. So I don't know if I'm able to speak on that for the last 5 years, because I'm kind of getting to this age where my, social pool becomes smaller and smaller as people move away or have kids, or it's hard to make newer friends. But I think Chicago and LA is the most interesting part of that discussion. I think there definitely is a difference between those two cities and the people and the area. I think for sure. Um, I
How
think the
so?
stereotype. I think the stereotype of LA being an industry town is very, very true. Where I'm not the type of person to like self promote or tell you these things that I'm doing and then also 20% exaggerate what it is. And that's just what this town is built on, to try to, market yourself, give yourself press, make yourself talked about, which is all social media is now. You want to call a lot of the stuff as content. No, it's just people desperate for attention. They're not interacting with anybody. They're not discovering anything. A lot of it's just copying each other. Um, and I think even the creative side of those two towns, like I haven't obviously lived in Chicago for a long time, but it seemed like when I was there, a lot of people were just really interested in the work. And
Hmm.
because there wasn't people coming to see your shows, It was very, very rare that Lorne Michaels would be in town. So most of the time you're just doing shows or improv shows or sketch shows for other people. And you're just like, we just want to make this show the best as it can be. And we're trying to learn. Whereas I think here in LA, it's like, I want to be seen so I can have an opportunity. And so you just have the wrong motives to do what you're doing. In terms of the people,
Yeah.
I think people are kind of the same everywhere. There's a lot of rich, shitty areas in Chicago with, I mean, they call it, what is it? I think Viagra Triangle. There's this area in Chicago where it's just like a bunch of old rich people, specifically old men. It's just like a lot of shops and fancy restaurants. And it's just like, this is kind of gross and weird. I don't like it. Like, I wish you could cut out Beverly Hills from Los Angeles and just put it in fucking Orange County or wherever the fuck they really want to be. I have no use for Beverly Hills whatsoever.
That is so real. That is so funny because it is just this place that
take out all of it. I don't care what it costs. Gavin Newsom, here it is. This is to get. I'm sure Gavin Newsom is watching. Gavin Newsom, just cut out Beverly Hills and ask them where they want to go. Increase my taxes and just move them there, and then we'll put like nice, cool theaters and art stuff and places where people can afford to live there.
I've never even thought of it like that, but you're absolutely right. It's like Beverly Hills wants nothing to do with Los Angeles at all.
And Los Angeles wants nothing to do with Beverly Hills.
That is great. I be in Orange County. I did enjoy Orange County though. I loved Orange County. I thought Orange County was great. It seems like
there
just wants.
But the more it's like, again, you dig for the details of something. And if you stay in Orange County for a couple weeks longer, you'd be like, this shit's really creepy. Like there's some real like I haven't been in Orange County all that much, so I can't really speak on it. But it just seems like you peel a couple layers back and you're like, okay, this is not the place I thought it was. This is not the place they're advertising it to be.
What do you mean? Tell me more. Tell me more, because I don't know. I mean,
Orange County is typically a little bit more Republican sided, I believe. Mm-hmm. It's typically more money. It's typically slightly more, I would say, probably Caucasian. But again, I don't have these data or figures. And that's a bad combination. If you have an area that's money and predominantly Caucasian, not cool. Same thing with Santa Monica. Santa Monica, I'm not a huge fan of.
What? Santa Monica's great too.
Now, there's parts of Santa Monica that are great. But as I walk down, certain streets, it feels like I'm walking down the same street with a Starbucks and a Gap and just a lot of people who are Instagramming things.
That sounds like LA in general.
But I think the more you learn about LA and see different neighborhoods, I think there's more interesting things there.
Fair, yes.
In terms of the arts. And I think that's the one thing of LA that's you'd hope that would show itself a little more, but again, it's so dominated by money that it's hard to embrace the artistic side of things without being like, how much money can I wring out of this thing?
Right. And so going back to the point about, you said you think that a lot of people in LA, it's like they have the wrong motives for doing what they're doing. In Chicago, they seem to be more passionate about the work. They're more interested in the work itself.
I think to a certain degree, but I think a lot of those Chicago people eventually are like, okay, now I need to make some money, and they move to New York or LA. And that's absolutely the truth. And that's the absolutely reason I'm in LA too. Like no matter what you choose to do, you need to hunker down and just be consumed by it, right? Like if you're following a craft or a career that you're like, I really, really love this, you need to be absolutely consumed by it for a certain period of years, which is kind of how the Malcolm Gladwell 10,000 hours kind of thing fits in. Like you need to do all your energy into this one thing to be good at it. And I think that's the one good thing that Chicago has. It's like, we're just all in our 20s and we want to learn how to be funny or learn how to be good actors in the theater. And then once you feel like you have that education, you're like, okay, now I need to kind of realize that this is also a bit of a business, or if this is what I want to do for a living, I need to go where there is the ability to make money. And it's not in Chicago, unfortunately, to do it full time. And so people end up moving to New York or LA.
Interesting. And like, based off of your experience in the industry, how many, rough approximation, how many people do you think that are in LA and working in entertainment, how many of them do you think are actually from LA versus how many people do you think are implants to LA?
I don't know. I mean, it seems like a lot of implants.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think the people that were born here and born in the industry have a huge leg up. That's the one thing that I've learned, uh, and continue to learn, that, you know, if it's nepotism, or if it's, somebody who works at this particular show that you can get brought in, that's honestly, it feels like 60%, 75% of the battle.
Really?
Because it's either who you know, and then also a lot of luck on that, and the talent is really the third portion, or it's the really, really talented people who spend all their time grinding and becoming the best that they can, that get that luck, that opportunity, and then that propels them. It's a combination of those three things. And I think a lot of the time, it's really the biggest factor of those three is who you know. It really is.
Really? That's so disappointing. I mean, we always hear that, it's all about who you know, it's all about who you know, but it's so disappointing that you can be the most talented person on the block and still not get a shot.
Yeah. Because
And
there's just everyone's so busy. Like, if you look at casting offices, which is kind of like the first place that you can, if you get a good relationship with a casting office and they like you as an actor, they will keep bringing you back. And more likely than not, they will, if they feel confident in your talent and your professionalism, they will keep trying to put you in things. And so a lot of times you have to be brought into that casting office by somebody, or have an agent that has a good direct relationship. Where in LA, that's really tough, because there's so many people, and so many people are behind schedule. And so, like, they don't have time to be like, today I want to look at 5 actors that I've never heard of or seen before. They don't have the time. They have to cast 20 people in this show that films next week. And so they're just like working really fast, because it's a business, and that's okay. But it's finding the people that are like, I'm aware that it's a business, but I'm also aware that we're dealing with humans and people, and we're trying to create something that we're not trying to sell soap, but we definitely want people to watch it and pay for it. But we want, it to be good, so people talk about it because it has value and it has nutrients for your soul, or to give you a break from your day for 2 hours. Those are all valuable things.
that makes a lot of sense now. Because I mean, I used to get so frustrated because I would, be scrolling through Instagram, just seeing some phenomenal singers, and just thinking about some of the content that's on the radio. It's like, yeah, these guys are okay, and most of it's electronically manipulated to make them seem better. It's like there's just so much talent out there, but it does make a lot of sense when you put it like that. It's just like they're just so busy. It's like, well, we have to go with what we're familiar with, or like who somebody we know, just to find as somebody to fill the role, because it's just about putting out so much content. And it feels like there has to be a downside of that maybe you're aware of, because there is a demand for so much of a quantity of material, that a lot of the quality kind of takes a back seat.
Absolutely. And I think this industry as well has the same problems of uh, um, large gaps in the economics of the people that a lot of the rest of the world does. One thing that's annoying me recently, and it goes back to when I was in Chicago, I did an audition for a Minute Maid orange juice. And how the audition process typically works is you do the audition. If they like you, say they audition 100 people, they pick out 20 people that they like, and they have a callback. And so those 20 people are at the callback, then they narrow it down to say 3 or 4 after that. And then if you're in that 3 or 4, they put you on hold. So they say, hold your schedule for this date. We may want to use you. We will let you know in the next couple of days. So you don't accept any other work for that particular day because you're on hold. So this particular orange juice commercial, they were looking for an improviser, which is great. Tons of Chicago improvisers. I'm really good at that sort of commercial improvise thing. They were looking for a Ty Burrell type, which was the father on Modern Family, who's
Okay. Yeah.
Really funny guy. So they were looking for a Ty Burrell type. So I was like, I know exactly what they wanted. They allowed me to improvise in the audition. I felt really, really good. I was on hold, so I knew I was down to like the last 2 or 3, maybe 4, depending on what they're looking for. I got called that I didn't get it. And typically you don't know who gets it. If it's someone from your town, they may have seen someone in LA. But sure enough, 3 or 4 months later, I see the commercial, and guess who's in it? It's Ty Burrell. And that's great. They got what they were looking for. I don't know if they were using everybody else as like a negotiation piece. They really get Ty Burrell. But also, does Ty Burrell need to be doing a Minute Maid commercial after 5 years of being on a sitcom and probably making, I don't know, 150, 200K an episode? Because I fucking really need this Minute Maid commercial so I can pay bills and do all that. And that's another problem that's happening with this industry, that, and these companies want these big names, but a lot of times it's just for voiceover work. Like Rashida Jones, I think, is the voice for Expedia or one of these travel things. And every time I hear it, it makes my fucking skin crawl because I love Rashida Jones. She's great. She doesn't need that job. She has a very successful career through movies, TV. Her father is
Mhm.
pretty well known and has a good chunk of money probably waiting for her.
Mhm.
She doesn't need this Expedia job. Versus, do you know how many thousands of people in Los Angeles really, really need all those jobs? It's a
Right.
lot. Um,
Right.
I forget what the original question is, but here we are again, where I trailed off.
No, but this
Um,
is absolutely fascinating because you're absolutely right. Because like these huge names that are already set in the industry, it's like, so what are you doing to the rest of the pool of people who need just a little more cash flow, like a diversity of people, just like, and what is it? It's like, do we think that because Rashida Jones's voice is on Expedia that that's going to sell more than Joe Blow? Like, is there that much data to support that?
and how many people are really recognizing her name? Like she's fairly famous, but if I ask my mom, who lives in Michigan, who Rashida Jones is, she'd probably say, "Oh, she works at the post office, doesn't she?" I'm like, "No, no." So it's like, what is that voice doing? And it happens a lot on commercials. Like I'll recognize a voice. I don't know how many other people do, but it's like that's a job that someone else needed. And for a period of time, it at least felt to me that the industry was, that's how you climb the ranks. You know, you start out by doing small local regional commercials to get your experience, know what a set is like, know what working with a director is like, know what being professional prepared is like, and you slowly climb the ranks in the world of commercials, and you get a one line thing on TV, you learn what those sets are like, and your roles can slowly grow from there. And that just doesn't seem to be the reality, if it ever was one, or it just doesn't exist at all. But that seems like the way it almost should be. um, but there's no mayor of Hollywood being like, actor, not an actor, sorry, you have to move back to Ohio, sorry. And that's a open market capitalistic system, right? But we also have learned that that actual capitalism system is also very well organized and not fair for everybody. So
Indeed, it's definitely
hence
not.
Hollywood.
Hence Hollywood. I was going to ask you something else about acting. Oh yeah, yeah. So I've been in sales for a while, and in sales you have to hear no quite a bit. And like I can't imagine how stressful that would be. Like to go in for an interview and they're like, okay, keep this day open, and so you can't fill it with anything, and you got to put your life on hold for that one space, and then you're still told no. So like in your industry, I feel like that's a part of the job, like thickening your skin because you're told no pretty frequently. You're constantly going up and to subject yourself to this type of criticism in which somebody either accepts or rejects you. So, like, how do you manage that?
I think it's probably tougher when you're younger. I mean, I think some people still have more problems with it. I could really give a shit less if someone tells me no, because at least I had the opportunity to be like, "Hey, what about me? I can do this thing. Look at this dance. I can do a voice." And if they say no, I'll be like, "Okay." I hopefully I have two or three more of those. I will take a dozen no's a day. I don't care. I know, because either I'm not right for that role. Maybe they found someone else that they like more. Maybe they're right, maybe they're wrong, or maybe they had to cut that role. Whatever it is, I know there's a lot of different circumstances, and maybe that's because I have a little bit, or anybody who has a little bit more experiences knows that there's a lot of different decisions purely like, oh, they don't like my face, which is kind of what it feels like for a number of years. Or like, I'm not good enough. I was like, I know that I'm good enough, but I also know there's a lot of different circumstances that are helping me or hurting me or not enabling me to get every single job that I want or that I go up for. And sometimes it makes no sense. Like I think as you get older, you become more comfortable with yourself and who you are and what your skill set is, or maybe you've developed yourself a little bit more. So, I'm a late bloomer in a lot of different aspects. We don't need to go into the high school locker room stuff with my pubic hair, but if we want to, we can.
No, that's okay.
um,
We can skip that.
but even now, it's like it's taken me a long time to figure out what my corner of this sort of artistic and business world is and what I'm best suited for. So a lot of times when I get an audition, I almost want to say, it's like, I don't want to do this because it's not right, but you have to take every opportunity that you can, because you can't tell your agent, who may or may not have worked hard to get you that audition, be like, yeah, I don't want to do that. But sometimes it feels like there was one audition that I had in Chicago very, very early on. I was maybe 25, 26. It was for a video game. It was going to be a mocap video game where they put the little balls on you and you have to do the thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so they wanted improvisers to come in and play a bunch of different characters. And it was basically for like a DC video game, but they couldn't use the name. So you had to pretend to be the Joker or Superman and all. And so they made me do the stupidest shit I had ever have to do in an audition. And I just felt so dumb. And if I had the ability to get really embarrassed, I would have been really, really embarrassed. But after that, I was like, I never want to do that sort of thing again, where they don't know what they're looking for. They don't give you clear things to do. And you just feel stupid and like it's a waste of your time. And something like, I'm not the right person for this. You mocap me in whatever suit that you want. I'm not going to jump around and be able to do like ninja kicks and stuff. It's like, be better at your job so you don't have to waste your time by having me come in and do this.
But doesn't that kind of go against the idea of take every opportunity that comes?
Yeah, and that's what I did. But like looking back, it's like you can see that they weren't prepared and they weren't knowing what they're looking for. And maybe even the casting office figured that out and be like, yeah, we might not work with them again.
Right.
Because sometimes you have to say no to money. I have turned down auditions and they've been for the military and for like Republican national conventions. Like you get a lot of those, especially the military, when you're at a certain age. And I was like, no, I'm not doing that. I'm not selling some kid, because I got those same phone calls in high school, the year that you graduate, from all the different branches. You're like, what are you doing for your future? Like, fuck off. I'm not fucking flying your plane or whatever you want me to do.
Right.
And so I'm not doing that to some kid who's, you see some of the commercials now, like there's one now where it tries to make it like a video game. Like, and at the end it's like Marines. I'm like, that's weird.
Oh wow, but it's so cool to know that like you have a standard and you're like, no, I'm not crossing that line. It's too much. It's against what you like stand for or what you believe in. So it's like you're just not going to do it just for an extra dollar. And I think you said something really important about like, that you're good enough, and that there are a lot of other variables that sometimes play into whether or not you get a role, and you're okay with that. You factored all of that in. You're like, okay, well, I know I'm good enough for this role, but there are probably a lot of things that you are not aware of that are probably playing against you, and you have become okay with that. How long have you had that mentality of knowing that you're good enough in the industry?
I think you have to have that bit of foolishness no matter what, in any sort of creative or even sports. I think is another one where it's like, these aren't really jobs. You know what I mean? Like, if the world went to shit and life as we know it crumbled, there's not going to be a bunch of TV shows on Netflix. You know what I mean? Like, there's going to be some guy that goes around to village and does a show, which has always existed. So I know that this whole thing is a little bit foolish and we are just playing pretend, but you have to take it seriously. But I knew to a certain degree that I had I felt like I had this creative side to me and this energy that I felt. I didn't know what to do with it at a young age because it just wasn't a thing in my world that existed. Like, if I was a 14-year-old growing up in Los Angeles versus growing up in Michigan, where my father was a bread salesman and my mother was a housewife, growing up in Los Angeles as a 14-year-old, I would have got so many more opportunities purely because the place I was at, or, you know, maybe my father was a producer, which we don't know what the fuck they do, you know, but I would be in an entirely different place right now as a 42-year-old. And I believe that 100%, because just the circumstances of where I was, which again is just about opportunity, right? And opportunity can be blocked for a whole bunch of reasons based on where you live, who you know, what the color of your skin is, what your religion, like all these things, which are right and wrong to a certain degree. We have to realize that whatever we can do, we have to give people opportunities. And so I realized and denied it for a long time until I kind of got in college and I just jumped into an acting class and I did stand up for the first time. And you just feel that uh, intensity within you. It's a rush. It absolutely is a rush. And you feel like you're taken away for the moment. Like anything you can find in your life to do where you're not looking at your watch or not looking at the time, I think is something you need to keep following, because there's a certain few things, and basketball is one of them. I don't care what time it is. I'm playing basketball. You know what I mean? I'm not looking at the time. I'm not looking at the time when I'm writing or on a set. I'm locked into that, and you just disappear. And if you can also find something where you disappear into and it creates something for someone else as well, not just like I could get really fucking high and disappear, but that's, what is that doing? You know, if I can create something and give something to someone as well, be it an emotion, an idea, an experience, a look inside to something else, that's what I really enjoy. And that's kind of what I'm chasing. And I think I don't know how good I am at it in the aspect of the world. Like there's people that are way more talented than me at a lot of this. But I think me as an individual, I'm an individual. I'm not trying to copy what I see on TV, what this person does, what that person does. You know, you get a lot of comparisons in your life and you try to chase comparisons. I was a huge Jim Carrey fan for a very, very long time in my youth. And there's a part of me, like, he was a teacher. I chased after certain things he did, and he certainly influenced me. But as you get older, I realize I'm an entirely different machine than he is, because of his past experiences, which are way more traumatic than mine, as well as, you know, my life. I've been able to like live a life and not be sucked out of, like, I've been married, I have my in-laws, like I'm able to call on these normal experiences that everybody has and not be like this Hollywood A-lister who's secluded in a house, who's no longer able to live life, which I think is a lot of times what happens to like these really, really famous people, where everyone's all of a sudden like, yeah, they're not good anymore. And it's like, yeah, because they're not living life. They're not having experiences anymore. You know, people give shit to Eddie Murphy for years after he became super, super famous. It's like, yeah, he can't go outside. He can't have genuine interactions with people without them wanting something anymore. And that makes it really hard to express things, because then you're just expressing what your life is. And that's like, I don't know, should I get that pink giraffe or should I get the normal colored giraffe for the birthday party? Like, that's just not relatable. So yeah, that started as a question, as when did I know when I was able to do this, or if I had talent? And it just spiraled again. I'm just a spiraling maniac. But I think I always had the idea, but you're always confronted of, and I think this last year with everybody being locked indoors, you're confronting a lot of your demons or what you want to do with your life. And there's certainly aspects, and constantly have been aspects of like, am I doing the right thing? You know, do I still want to do this? Is this the right thing for me and my wife and my future? Always. And you kind of, every day I kind of ask myself that, but I find the creative stuff so fulfilling, and I've learned so much about myself and other people. Like, I wouldn't ever want to say goodbye to that. And if it eventually someday does mean where, I mean, I've been living my life for the most part, having a day job and doing this stuff kind of on the side, you know, different percentages, 75% day job, 25% acting, 50% day job, 50% acting, depending on the year. That might just be the rest of my life. And I think I'm okay with that, because I still get to do one of the things that fulfills me and that has taught me who I am, kind of.
Yeah, that is so important. I think that's probably the best maybe indicator that people can use on if it's something they should pursue. And it's like, what is it that you're doing in which you forget to look at your clock? You forget to look at the time. Like, that's probably the simplest and and most important aspect of whether or not you should pursue something. It's like, can you get lost in the activity? And I'm probably going to ask people that question more often now, because it's like, what are you doing where you just have no interest in anything else? Like, you're not worried about what time of day it is or how long you need to divvy out for. It's like, no, you're just going to do it. And I think a lot of people, I would assume that a lot of people don't even know what that is yet.
Or they don't even think about it. I think for a lot of people, that's like grilling on the weekends. Like
Yeah.
that in itself, it can be a spiritual experience, because I think, and it's mostly guys who are not tend to be in touch with their emotions. I think they're just naturally, as they're flipping their steaks or their burgers, they're thinking about things. It's
Mm-hmm.
unavoidable that you're not. Your brain's going to keep moving, but it does give you this stillness, which I think, number one, you're probably away from your screaming kids or whatever, golfing, same sort of thing.
Yeah.
Shoot me in the head if I have to go golfing. I hate golf, but I understand that it's a getaway for people. It's a people that they can bond, that, they can focus themselves on this specific act and trying to overcome it, be the best golfer that you can be. And I think that teaches you about yourself and other things. Same thing with the grill. People find hobbies are important. I think we overlook how important hobbies are, or we'll make fun of people's hobbies, which is fine. The world is, you can make fun of the world, and we don't need to all take every single thing personally, but people make fun of each other's hobbies, and sure, but also fuck you. That's their hobby. That's what they like doing. If someone wants to make a quilt, I'm not going to make a quilt, but someone likes it. Grandma loves making quilts. She doesn't want to go see a movie. She's making quilts.
She's making quilts. That's her thing. Leave her alone. Yeah. She's making quilts. And I think that's an important distinction to make, is that, like, your thing, which allows you to get lost in the moment, doesn't have to have a monetary aspect to it. It doesn't have to be producing anything. It's just like, what is it that allows you to get lost? Because I think in today's capitalistic society, it's like, oh yeah, you love this. Well, have you thought about turning it into a money-making machine? It's like, no, because then that would kind of change it for some people. It's great if you can do that, but not everybody needs to. But it's really interesting that a lot of conversations attempt to encourage people to turn it into some type of monetary thing, and it doesn't have to be that.
How do you monetize it? How do we make money out of this?
Right.
Which is fair to a certain degree, but if then that becomes your only motive, and I think that's what a lot of things are. It's like, a lot of writers that I have is like, I want to get a show that sells. And I think that's great. You do want that because you want to make a living at it. But then if you're taking your ideas, which could have a pure, interesting place where they start, about the loss of a father or something, but then if you make it into totally something else just to make it to sell, well, you lose where your original inspiration came from. And I think the more you get into that habit, the more you I think it loses the point. I think a lot of movies are great. To Fast and Furious, people love those movies. I think they're stupid as shit, but I understand that they're an escape for people. People like cars and submarines now. I don't know where they're going with those, but I don't find that's not art to me. I think there's artists that work on it. I just don't think they're not expressing anything about humanity or being a person. I guess I haven't seen them all, so I can't accurately, but I'm guesstimating.
I think you're pretty close to accurate.
I think they half-assed some family stuff in there, but I don't know.
Fair. I think that's probably a good note to finish on.
Me shitting on the Fast and Furious franchise.
Dan shitting on Fast
never working with them.
And half-assing some of the family scenes in that movie. Well, Dan, I appreciate you joining No More Nonversations and chatting with me. I've learned so much about you and about the industry you work in and the world. So hang on. I'm going to end this recording and just hang on for a few minutes.
Gotcha. Thanks for having.
You got it.